Well, welcome everybody to 8751. If you're not entirely sure what this is, well, first of all, if you're on Patreon watching this, thank you so much for watching this. This is what was originally going to be a review show of the 8750 podcast. If you've never heard of the 8750 podcast and you've never listened to it, go listen to that first. It's on podcast platforms everywhere before you check this out. And yeah, it's going to go off the hinges real quick because this is no longer a review podcast. Think of this more like the Talking Dead for 8750, where I'm just kind of go over and discuss things that happen in each episode and some of the highlights that I enjoyed the most. And maybe on some of the topics they discuss, if I find them interesting enough. Wow, that sounds really bad. If I find them interesting enough. Maybe on some of the topics that interest, because they can be interesting to anybody, but if they're interesting to me, then maybe I will chime in. And so we're going to be going through each of these in chronological order, starting today with episode number 1. And I'm titling my episode Queso. It's just melted cheese. And that has a lot to do in common with this episode in general, but you'll hear a little bit more about that in a little bit. Oh, there's going to be a lot of cutting in this video because what I did was I committed myself to trying to listen to this show nonstop on just this episode for 8 hours straight. I only lasted about 4 hours. So I listened to it 4 times, and now it's been about a couple hours since I left work, and I'm trying to recall everything from memory. But that little part in the beginning, that little awkward moment where I had the weird awkward pose and just started off by going, well, that's a complete shout out to the very first part of the episode. I should also note there's definitely going to be spoilers because I'm talking about what happened in this episode. Honestly, if you're watching this, then you're already a fan of 8750, so I'm sure you've listened to it by now, especially considering I'm starting with episode 1. And if you're not, why the heck are you watching this? Leave! Go away! There's no reason for you to be watching this on my Patreon, or there's no reason for you to be watching this on Patreon if you're not already a listener of 8750 Podcast by Jeff and his friends. Like I said, the beginning of the episode starts off with this kind of brief 15-second of complete silence, and then just Jeff going, well, and then a bunch of laughter on the other end, and we get kind of a brief little introduction. If you're wondering what the heck 8750 is or what it even means, I'm still not entirely sure, but I think they describe it a little bit in the episode. I'm sure Jeff will tell me this because I'm going to send this to Jeff so that he can give me his feedback on this video. But I believe they said 8750 has a lot to do with where Jeff lives, which is Denver, Colorado, which I think they state is the Mile High City. So I guess 8750 has something to do with the city being mile high. But in actuality, as they're discussing, I guess the actual how many whatever goes into a mile is 2580. Look, I'm not good at math, so I don't know if that's feet in the mile or whatever. But the name of the show is 8750. That's kind of how we start. You have Jeff, you have his co-hosts Reed and Ryan. Ryan is on episode 1, but I don't know if I've ever heard Ryan again on any of the other episodes. We'll get into that later. I don't know what the heck happened to that guy. But he's in the first episode. They start off right off the bat by asking if he has a topic, and then getting into a brief argument because Jeff wasn't ready to start yet. And then Jeff, I guess in this episode, goes into some things where he discovered some ways of trying to make some funny audio that he's playing through a speaker. So I guess he's playing it from his computer through his phone speaker somehow, and he's trying to play applause. I don't know why he's trying to play applause, but that's how he's starting off the episode. And it sounds more like he just opened a door into a snowstorm because the audio does not come through the way it should. So the boys all get a good laugh out of that because it sounds like a snowblower. He tries again with another audio. I believe they say it sounds like somebody flushing the toilet. Eventually, he finally gets the right audio, and it does sound like applause, and everybody's like, it sounds like applause. It was a pretty little funny intro. I believe Ryan at some point asked Jeff if he wants to tell everybody what 8750 means or anything like that, and Jeff just straight up says no. He says, you can figure it out on your own. You're your own person. I don't control you. It was a pretty funny little moment. So, but they do, like I said, they do get into saying that 8750 has something to do with where he lives. It's very brief, and it's very quick, and you almost have to play it multiple times or you might miss it because by the time I listened to this 4 or 5 times I heard it, but the very first time I listened to the episode I didn't even hear it, and I was like, dude, I still don't know what 8750 means. So luckily, I kind of figured it out by listening to it multiple times. And wow, it's really freaking hot in here because I turned the air off for this video. Not the brightest idea. But yeah, in a few moments, the episode is mainly consisted of a bunch of them, I guess you would say, busting each other's balls or like picking on each other and teasing each other just like guys do when they're friends. But there are some pretty cool topics in the episode as well. And there's also the really funny story about the queso cheese just being melted cheese. I try to remember that off the top of my head, but that's later on in the episode. I think they start off, the first topic of discussion is Jeff asking the question of, what is something that is unique to you? Like something unique about you that is unique to you. It's, oh my goodness. I should have written this stuff down, but I didn't. But yeah, it's something like that along those lines. And Jeff states that he has the ability to hear things that most people shouldn't be able to hear. Which at first listen, you're like, wait, is this guy hearing voices? Is he hearing spirits? Like, what the heck is he talking about? And none of that is what he's talking about at all. He goes into a story about his office place that when he first started working there, I guess it was like right away, whenever he noticed that whenever somebody would leave the office area, there was like this clicking noise. And so the one day he went up to the secretary or whoever it was at the desk and was like, hey, does that like bother you? I think he called her Penny. He says, hey Penny, does that bother you that every time someone leaves there's like a clicking noise? Like, what is that, a motion sensor? And he said Penny just looked at him like, what are you talking about? And he was like, what, you've been here how long now, like 20 years? And you've never heard this clicking noise? And she apparently had no idea what he was talking about, so he walked away and then went back to the door, and sure enough the clicking noise was there and she heard it and was like, so I guess that kind of tied into something unique for Jeff, which was very interesting. I want to know Jeff, if you watch this, I want to know if you have any more stories about unique things you've heard, because that was only one thing. And that might not have been your unique hearing. It might have just been one person that was oblivious to her surroundings. That could have also been a thing. But if there's other stories, tell them on the podcast so I can hear more in the future. And I believe the second thing Jeff stated about himself, it was supposed to be one thing, but Jeff, of course, had multiple things. So he said, I think, two things. The other second thing he said was that he had the ability to mess up any recipe, even if he's not trying. So he went into a story of ruining mac and cheese once, where he undercooked the noodles. And I guess another time he burned the rice because he didn't put enough water. And so it was really smoky. And his dogs avoided the kitchen for like an hour and a half, which is actually really funny because I think I actually have, not with rice. I've never worked with rice really, but when I was a teenager, I definitely undercooked some mac and cheese. So I can relate to that because as a teenager, my parents were like out late. So I had to like serve dinner one night, I think, for my little sister. And I tried to make like hot dogs and mac and cheese or something like that. And I just remember I screwed it up. My little sister still ate it and said it was good, but I don't even think I undercooked it. I think I undercooked it because it was still a little crunchy. Mac and cheese is not supposed to be crunchy. It's supposed to be soft. So for the boy Jeff, I can definitely relate to that story. And then I think Ryan had, oh my goodness, I don't remember what. I think Ryan's was that he could remember, like his memory is really good for like directions and stuff like that and recipes and stuff like that. He could remember stuff like that. That was kind of interesting. It'd be good to have a memory because I can't even remember half the things I did the day before most of the time. So, and I'm only 33 right now. But yeah, that one was interesting. And then we got to probably the grossest thing you'll hear on the entire podcast, which was need. Oh my goodness. It's too late at night when I'm recording this. I'm sorry, Patreon members. I'm sorry, VIP Club. But Reed mentions that he can bend his knuckle can be hyper extended backwards, which already sounds disgusting. But he said it's so weird that like in between the two tendons on his knuckle, he could fit a quarter flat side, like not even sideways, but flat between it, and it sounds absolutely disgusting. Ryan compares it to the Independence Day alien, like the knee on that alien. I'm gonna have to Google that sometime because I don't remember. I remember Independence Day, but I don't remember what the knee of the alien looks like. But just from the sound of it alone, it sounds absolutely disgusting. So I'm kind of rushing through this. I don't know how long this video is. I mean, the episode of the podcast is like over an hour, but I'm trying not to make my Patreon videos over an hour long. So this video might only be like 15, 20 minutes long. I don't know. This is the first one. Just bear with me. I'm working through it here. I've never done anything like this. Like I said, it was originally supposed to be a review show, and I've never done a review, so that kind of flopped real quick. This is more of I guess it's kind of a review because I'm really just talking about things I like. So it's nothing different from like a normal podcast. But anyway, so that was the unique topic conversation. Something else I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video was that Ryan was giving Jeff crap about his topic, about the unique things to you. But in the beginning of the video, Ryan didn't even have a topic. He never even brought a topic to the table, so he had to steal one of Reed's because Reed had 2 topics. So it was like, Jeff was like, listen, that's something that ticks me off about you. You're over here giving me crap about my topic, and you didn't even bring a topic. You had to take one and borrow one from Reed. So I will say that that topic that Reed did, I think was a really cool topic. It was, what is a video game that you wish that you could replay again for the first time? Like, with no memory of it, just replay it for the first time. They all said some, well, I'll start with Jeff's. Jeff's, he said, was Red Dead Redemption 2 because he absolutely loved that game. That was a really good game. I never actually finished it because it was so long. And nowadays, like, when a game is super long, I'll play it for hours and hours and hours and just never finish it. And then I'll be like, I'll come back to this eventually. That was kind of my story with Red Dead Redemption 2. But that was the best looking game I think I saw. When I had it, it was on PS4. And I was like, between that and Last of Us 2, graphic-wise, those were some amazing looking games. So I definitely agreed with him on that. Trying to think of what Ryan said. Yeah, I don't remember what the heck Ryan said. So I'm skipping over that guy. Sorry if you know what Ryan said and I don't, just freaking like type it in my Patreon comments and I'll stand corrected. I know Reed said some near Automata, I believe it was, which was actually his story of that was really funny because he was saying how much he loved the game and like the story of the game and the characters. And like he wanted to obviously relive that experience for the first time, but then he goes on to say that the gameplay is like nothing really to like get that excited about, which is really funny because that of course just opened him up to be teased for a few minutes because they're like, you say that this game is amazing, but then you say that the game is like nothing to be like over, like the gameplay is nothing to be over excited about. So he tried to explain that it was more about the story, and then he goes into a thing saying about how sad it is, saying it's just a really sad game. And Jeff is like, well, I don't like bummers. Which is pretty funny, because that sounds like me, too. I don't want a game that's just, like, completely depressing. And I've never played Nier Automata, or Automata, whatever the heck it's called. I've never played that one, so that was pretty interesting. And I think I'm going to chime in on this topic. I didn't chime in on anything for the unique things about yourself, because I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that's super unique about me. Like, when it comes to something like that. So I skipped over that one. But a game, I think I have a couple games. So now, like, Jeff had a couple unique things about him. I have a couple games on my list. I think I have at least 3. One of them is definitely Diablo 2. And Cody, you're a member on my Patreon VIP Club member. I'm sure you have a fond experience the first time you played this game as well. When I first discovered this game, I was a teenager. And I had a Macintosh computer, and it was one of the only games that would work on that computer. I bought the Diablo 2 battle chest from, like, a Sunoco. No, it was a EB Games, I think it was, at the mall. And I bought the battle chest, came home and installed it. And many nights of not getting any homework done in school, which is probably why I have a GED instead of a graduation diploma, because I was spending hours in the middle of the night playing this game. And it would just be so cool to re-experience a game like that, nostalgia like that for the first time. I really envy any of you new kids out there now that could be experiencing this for the first time with the Diablo 2 Resurrected that's coming out on September 23rd. Your boy will be playing that exclusively on this Patreon channel, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I envy anybody who can experience this story and this gameplay for the first time, because it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest games ever played. Another one on my list would definitely be Far Cry 3. If you're following my Tony Z Plays YouTube channel, then you'll know that I really love that game. So that was like my first big Far Cry game. And I was just insanely into it. So to experience that for the first time would also be really cool. I will be getting to that eventually on my YouTube channel. And the last one would be Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I mean, if you haven't heard of Skyrim, you haven't played Skyrim, you must be living under a rock. But to experience a game like that for the first time again would be freaking amazing. Now, Morrowind was my first Elder Scrolls game, so that one was my favorite. But Skyrim just took it to a whole nother level. But yeah, that's enough about me. This is supposed to be about 8750, dang it. I'm not supposed to be spouting off stuff about myself. So we're going to go ahead and get into the next topic. But first, I'm going to have a brief word from our sponsors. All right, so hopefully y'all don't hear the AC in the background, but I had to turn that back on because I'm like sweating bullets over here trying to record this video. I believe we've covered 2 of the topics that were discussed in the video, and I've probably been all over the place and not even in order because I've kind of been like blazing through it. I didn't even get to the queso cheese story, so I guess I'll go ahead and get into that a little bit of a backstory on that, which is why I'm calling this episode this. I guess at some point Ryan was visiting. Well, actually, I should get into. They talk about another one of their friends who is not on this episode, but is in future episodes, and his name is Ace Guy. And so they go into a whole thing about him, and they're like picking on him. Of course, picking on the friend that's not there. Got all of that. But they pick on him quite a few times and some of his stuff, and mention how he has to get on the podcast to talk about a few things. And oh, you know what? That just reminded me of something else in the episode. At one point, when Jeff is talking about the unique things about himself, Reed asks him if he's talking about the Ankh tattoo on his thigh, and it turns into a whole thing on where Jeff is like laughing. Is like, how do you even remember that? And also, I think you're forgetting the word awesome. Still to this day, I have no idea what the heck Ankh. I have no idea what that is. Someone wants to clarify that for me. I have no freaking clue. I don't know if it was like some inside joke or whatever, but yeah, it was a pretty funny thing going on because he's talking about a tattoo on his inner thigh, and Jeff was like, how do you even remember that? I forget I have that thing. That was a little funny moment, and I think that was when they first started getting into the topics about Ace Guy, where Jeff says that Ace Guy needs to be on the show if they're going to talk about crappy tattoos or something like that. And Ryan is like, well, you can't blame him, he was in the military. And everybody just pauses and is like, what? Being in the military is not an excuse for a crappy tattoo. And Ryan's just like, well, all they have time to do is like sit around and work out and get tattoos. And that part made me laugh because I'm pretty sure in the military you're doing a lot more than just working out and doing tattoos. So I don't think that dude knew what he was talking about in that, but it was still a funny moment all the same. So yeah, a bunch of the parts in the episode, they're making fun of him. They're making fun of his laugh. There gets a point where Jeff makes fun of the fact that he's losing his hair and then immediately apologizes for it because he doesn't want to curse himself with the gift of hair loss, which you can see on top of my head. I'm there already. And I'm only 33, so you definitely don't want to get cursed with that, man. It's not fun. And that was a pretty low blow to your friend to talk about that. At some point, they were also talking about something in Canada. I think we were talking about that he has been acting weird lately. Like there's a firecracker stuffed up his behind or something like that. And that you get firecrackers in Canada and you give them maple syrup. It was something really weird about that had to do with maple syrup. I don't know what the heck Jeff was talking about. It was a funny moment. Like I said, I'm not going to cover the whole episode in like great detail, so this video doesn't run too long. But it is well worth it for some of these banters and some of these funny stories. But yeah, so at some point they ended up just commenting about they said something about queso. They asked if there was queso on it, and then it was just like, it's just melted cheese. And I guess it went into a whole story of when Ryan came to visit Jeff and his ex-wife, which I should note, not his ex-wife, his ex-girlfriend, who is his now wife, but he refers to it as his ex-girlfriend on the show, but she's actually his wife now, which is like a running thing on the show. I guess whenever he was coming to visit them, they were doing this whole thing when he was there, pretending like he was new to the world and he'd never seen anything. So they were like going out to the mall and they were like, this is a shoe store. You can buy shoes here. And it became like this funny story. And I guess they went to some restaurant called Qdoba. I think it was Qdoba. Oh my goodness. I don't remember if that's the right name or not. Ryan refers to it as like the worst place to get Chipotle. And, and Jeff says that's kind of harsh, but I'll allow it, which is pretty funny. Anyway, so I guess while they were there, they were saying that anybody with a brain could tell that they were like joking around about things. But I guess there was some 17-year-old or something there that thought they were absolutely serious and was like, hey, you should get this. And they were like, you should get the queso. And they were like, you know what queso is? It's just melted cheese. Like the girl, it was, I guess, a 17-year-old girl, and she was like super excited to tell Ryan that queso was just melted cheese. Like it was like some big deal that he'd never heard of before. So I guess somehow this turned into a really funny story, which is why I decided to really crappily tell the story for 8751. It's kind of hard to retell a story that somebody else tells better than you that was there in the experience, but I guess that's kind of what this show has turned into for this first episode. But yeah, so they go into that story. That's the name of this episode. I think it's a pretty funny little story, and I believe I don't remember what the heck I think the final topic might have been. No, what the heck was the last topic? Oh no, I'm gonna have to cut this out because I can't remember. I have to cut this part. Okay, so the last topic. Sorry about the cutting there. I completely spaced because it's like midnight right now. But anyway, the last topic Reed had brought up was about a Twitch streamer. I can't remember the guy's name, but I guess he had done like a stream, some kind of live stream where every subscription he got on his Twitch added like 10 seconds or something like that to the extended form of the live stream. So it was like a subathon. And the guy went like 30 days of just live streaming for like 24 hours straight. So like whenever he went to sleep, his moderators in his like Twitch stream chat did like a podcast for the entire time. He said he took a shower on stream, but of course he wore swimming trunks because of the TOS, the terms or the Twitch terms, something like that. But he did it for like 30 days straight, and I guess in the end, after he donated half to charity, gave some to like his moderators that did stuff, and then he I guess at the end he made like $200,000 something like that. And I think Reed's question of topic was, how long do you think you could last? Like if you were making that kind of money. And Jeff obviously was like, how much was he making a day? And it came down to like 21,000 something like that a day. He was like, yeah, I could probably do that for a good bit of time because I'd be set for life. I think the other two, I think Ryan said maybe about 3 weeks, and I think Jeff said about a week or maybe more if he could do it. And I'm kind of in agreement with them. I don't even think I could go a week, to be honestly, because I can barely even do videos without getting absolutely exhausted. So I think a Twitch stream, trying to like keep it entertaining and do it for long periods of time, there's no way I would last. Maybe one day. I doubt I'd even last that long because I don't want people like watching everything I do in my life. I'm kind of weird like that. Like I'm good with the gaming and the stuff like that, but yeah, I don't think I could even last a day. I mean, if one day got me 20 freaking grand though, I might be tempted. That's a lot of dang money. But yeah, that was a pretty cool little story. And then there was another random part. I think I'm about getting towards the end of the episode now, but there was another random part I completely forgot about that Jeff randomly asked if they ever got those ads that popped up on YouTube whenever they were watching YouTube about the Lawnmower 2.0, which if you don't know what that is, I apologize. Cover your ears if you're not in a family-friendly environment. But that's the trimmer for your you-know-what if you're a guy down below. Since I'm trying to keep this as family-friendly as possible, that's all I'm going to call it. But he said that they mentioned about the weirdest thing about the commercial was how in the beginning it mentions getting it for your dad or your brother, which was really freaking weird because why would you start off by asking somebody if they want to get a trimmer for their area for their dad or their brother? It's like, the last time I checked, most people shouldn't be looking at their dad or their brother to know if they need that. So I'm in agreement on why the heck would an ad ever announce that. Now, significant other, I would definitely get that. That makes sense. Dad or brother, definitely a freaking weird thing going on in that commercial. I don't know why they felt the need to mention that. Obviously, 8750 goes on for a little bit longer than that, and they're like having a good laugh about it. That was a pretty funny part of the episode. And then the last part of the episode, the very last thing, which is actually a running segment on every episode now. On this one, they just call it Nobody Asked, but it eventually becomes Nobody Asked Jeff, or Nobody Asked Jeff if you go by his Twitter handle, which is basically a segment where Reed goes on to Reddit, into a Reddit advice column, and he pulls somebody's question where they were asking for advice, and Jeff is going to give the answer to that advice, but of course, nobody asked Jeff. They just asked Reddit, and Jeff is just giving his opinion on the advice anyway. So that's a segment that's become a running thing. It's on like every episode now. It's pretty funny because some of the questions that Reed finds. The first one was pretty interesting. It was a girl that I guess it was a teenager that was posting it because she had just found out that she was pregnant. And so she said that she had done it with her boyfriend or whatever because she wanted to try out the experience. And she said that the guy had like pulled out or whatever, but she still got pregnant and she was worried and she was scared to tell her parents. And, you know, a normal thing that would happen as a teenager. who somehow thinks that by doing it without protection, with your boyfriend pulling out, is going to protect you from getting pregnant, which is obviously not the case. And I think Jeff's joke, well, his first word of advice, which was obviously a joke, was that if she's scared of telling her parents, just like, don't tell your parents. It was like, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, come on, what's the worst that's going to happen? Just don't tell them. Which is pretty funny, because obviously they're eventually going to find out as you start to grow. And I think his other bit of advice was to go back in time and tell yourself not to make the mistake that you just made. Which is also pretty funny. So that was a pretty cool little end to the show. I believe that was the end of that show, ended with that, on that note. So I guess if I was going to review a show, obviously I didn't talk about everything that happened in there, because I can't. You'd think after listening to it as many times as I did that I would remember everything, but that doesn't work out for me. So I guess I'll try and do this as a review. I would say it's probably about, if I was going to do it out of 10, I would say 7 out of 10, because there are a couple points where they kind of like drop off a little bit. But there are some, oh my goodness, there's stuff I forgot to mention that may bump it up. Jeff has some really funny moments where he has the computer talk instead of him. Like, he types in stuff and it responds and talks to people in like a female voice, and they call it Microsoft Sandy. Those were some pretty good highlights of the video in certain sections. Like, there's parts where I think Ryan is like teasing Jeff, and Jeff does the voice, and it's just like, do you really want to hurt me? It was really funny. So that might bump it up a bit, but it does drop off in a couple parts, and I do think it's a top-notch episode, but I do think later episodes get better. But you could tell that the camaraderie was definitely there in the first episode. You could tell that these guys knew each other for many, many years, and so it led to a good episode. I don't know if people are going to like the rating of this. I would say I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to say like an 8 out of 10 if I'm doing on it, because some of the later episodes are definitely 10 out of 10. This one is a good starting point, but I think because it's a starting point, I'm going to drop it to 8 out of 10, because there were a couple parts where they just kind of like dropped off a little bit. And I think it was just because it was their first time doing this, and the episode was more of just them shooting the breeze. But the topics were pretty good, and there were some really funny moments that I thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, that's going to do it for this very first episode of 8751, the review show of 8750. Hopefully you all who are watching on Patreon enjoyed this. If you didn't, let me know, and I just won't do it anymore. Like, that's just how it's going to be. You don't like it, then I'll continue on with other things. That's fine. I got other podcast ideas and other videos I can do. But hopefully you did. And if you hadn't listened to the episode, or you like listened to the episode and then listened to things I talked about or whatever, hopefully this is like a good supplement to that podcast. Like I said, kind of like a Talking Dead kind of thing. But yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Tony Z TV VIP members, for listening to this episode or watching this episode of 8751 Podcast. I'm going to be uploading both this video version and the audio version. I was messing up trying to do a parody ad on the video version, so that's only going to be in the audio version, because I do have some old parody ads I did, so I'm going to throw them in there, which is where I say a brief word from our sponsors. If it's awkwardly cut right back into me in the video, that's why. So that'll be in the audio only version, because I think there's some funny parody ads I did back in the day on my old show that will fit perfectly in here that I think y'all will enjoy. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. This, I should say to 8751, if I do continue with it, like if you all enjoy it, it'll be about once a month. Even though I'm doing content on here weekly, I'm mainly focused on videos, and then I have other stuff I want to interchange each week. So like this like today, whenever you're watching this, is 8751, and then next week might be one of my other shows that I have planned. Like I have Popcorn Farts, which if you could go back, I have an old episode, the first episode of a Popcorn Farts TV, like it's a TV review, a TV and movie review show that I did with my wife, where we reviewed a really crappy movie called Ants on a Plane. Go back and listen to that, because I think I'm going to be doing an episode 2 very, very soon. It's basically a show finding the crappy movies and deciding if they are really crappy or if they're actually like better than I expect. So I'll be bringing that back soon too. And yeah, once a month for 8751. Hopefully you enjoyed the first episode, and I'll see you on next episode. Peace out, everybody.